Uh, it might be, I don't see anybody from Australia. I think it's too early for people in North America. So, good morning. Hope you all had a good start to your day, and welcome to the MaLDReTH 2 working group meeting. Um, we are going to be focusing our talk today. I don't see CJ, he's not here yet. Anyway, we'll see how it goes. Um, we are going to be focusing our talk today on giving you an update on MaLDReTH. And let me jump right into it. Um, so again, welcome. We're going to talk first a bit about MaLDReTH and Prism, and I'll explain what they are for those who don't know. Then hopefully CJ Woodford is going to join us and give us an update on what's going on with GORC and MaLDReTH. We have a number of outreach and case studies to discuss. And then in the kind of the bulk of the session today, I'd like to focus on what we're doing in terms of interoperability. We have one of my co-chairs, Maria Pretzelis, has produced a wonderful video on interoperability in Prism. So we're going to look at that and then take a little bit more of a deep dive into the interoperability work that we are doing. So first, I'm happy to say that I've uh, joined. I'm not joined today, but I'm happy to say that we have a bunch of wonderful co-chairs just to introduce the group. Unfortunately, none of them could be here today. Adam Biles-Moore, who used to be with JISC and is now independent. Maria Pretzelis, who's with the California Digital Library, which, for those of you who don't know, kind of a fun organization. Ostensibly, they provide services to the University California Office of the President, i.e., the UC system. What does that actually mean in practice? Well, they're kind of a mini think tank brainstorming center that works on projects, and they've done a number of great projects over the years, including being involved with Dryad and also DMP Tool. So some of the things they do are kind of tools based. Other things are more policy based. And then Hallie Burns, who until recently was with Princeton, and now is working on some really interesting data rescue projects at the Harvard Law School. And Natalie Williams, who just joined us recently as co-chair, who's with the Digital Research Alliance of Canada. So those are the co-chairs of the group. So the first topic today is just to talk briefly about MaLDReTH and Prism. So for those who don't know, last year, the MaLDReTH 1, this is now called MaLDReTH 2 because we're in a second year, but the first year MaLDReTH, through an intensive and extensive community exercise, came up with the MaLDReTH map of tools used in the digital research lifecycle. It's based on tools and categories of tools used in different phases of the life cycle. So it's really built around the research life cycle. We came up with a harmonized version of the many versions of the research life cycle. We came up with our own harmonized version. And then when I say we, it was through this community exercise. Then for each phase of the life cycle, identified 3 categories of tools that were commonly used in that phase. So, for example, in the sharing phase, data repositories were a category. And then for each of the categories, so there are 33 categories, we then came up with 3 representative example, kind of typical tools, which are often found being used, examples of actual tools. So that is a map, if you will. In MaLDReTH 2, we've been primarily working on Prism, and we're going to talk more about Prism. I won't say too much about it at the moment, but Prism is actually an interactive tool. It's an actual tool. It's not just a spreadsheet. It's a tool which can be queried and interacted with, which was developed by our very talented co-chair Adam Biles-Moore, and we'll talk more about Prism later, and that's one of the focuses of today. So what are we doing at the moment? Really 3 kinds of things. First, some outreach and engagement. Second, we're also working with the GORC working group, which Francois has been extremely involved in over the many years. And again, if CJ's here, he's going to talk about it, but I'm not sure if he's here. So if he's not, I guess I'll go through CJ's slides. But we have a project with GORC where of the 9 elements of GORC, one is the services and tools element. And we're basically going through, and Chris has been very actively involved in this, through an exercise where we are ultimately going to be substituting, at a high level, substituting the MaLDReTH map into the GORC. And the MaLDReTH map will become, in some form still to be determined, will become the core of the services and tools element of GORC. So we've been working closely with the GORC. And then we've been working in PRISM on tool interoperability, because in MaLDReTH we have the map and we have all these tools, but tools aren't intended or shouldn't normally be used in isolation. They should be interoperable. So we're looking at interoperability between tools in PRISM. And then in the remainder of our time, I think we have about 6 or 7 months left in this working group. We also plan to look at longer term sustainability of both MaLDReTH and PRISM and governance. So this is case studies outreach. So this has been quite interesting and unexpected. You know that when you create something like GORC or MaLDReTH, you really don't know if it's going to be useful to anyone. If so, who it's going to be useful to. If so, how they'll use it. So it's a voyage, interesting voyage of discovery. So our learning so far, where's the interest in MaLDReTH coming from? And it's coming from three kind of categories of organizations or sources of interest, if you will. So one is institutional. So one of the early things that happened was UCL and Oxford both used MaLDReTH as a reference against which to, I wouldn't say to judge, but to some extent to judge, but at least to assess the research services that they were providing. Because MaLDReTH is, again, looking at all the different phases of the life cycle. It's a fairly comprehensive construct. And again, it's not a list of tools. It's the construct of how things could be put together. So one is institutions. A second, that was pretty expected, I guess. A second category of interest is coming from research infrastructures. And maybe this was slightly less expected, but also very interesting. So the Digital Research Alliance of Canada and SURF in the Netherlands, the both NRENs for Canada and Netherlands respectively, are both in the process of putting together national infrastructures, which in principle will be delivered as integrated services to institutions, research institutions in their countries, and they've both used MaLDReTH as reference. So second category is groups who are actually building research infrastructures. Then a third category, and again, this was also maybe a little bit unexpected, is this is a bit harder to characterize them exactly what they are, but a third category is others who have put together lists of research tools which are being used in their countries or in their regions or even at their institution. And I would say the kind of the nature of the interest here is a little bit different. It appears to be different anyway, in the sense that it's not so much using MaLDReTH as a reference. It is, I guess, using MaLDReTH as a reference, but also they want to do their own thing. And I guess MaLDReTH is kind of a reference and possibly a model. And today we're fortunate to have one of those groups with the Library of the Czech Academy of Sciences, which has put together not only a list of research tools that are used in Czech institutions, but also, as you'll see, almost kind of a mini mini Prism, an interactive tool which can be used to query those the tools that are listed there. And I'm really delighted to welcome Anna Soldanova, who is now going to introduce the catalog. So Anna, let me see, I need to stop sharing, and then you can share, hopefully.
Okay, hello everyone. Okay, Rory, I think you can just share. Yeah,
As I
you
keep
can
sharing, shall
continue
I?
sharing. Yeah.
Okay, fine. Yeah, let me just do that. Sorry. Yeah, go back to.
So thank you for the introduction. My name is Anna Soldanova, and I'm from the Open Science Department of the Library of the Czech Academy of Sciences. We joined the MaLDReTH 2 group quite recently, and it was in order to join forces and maybe also develop further our so-called catalog of data management tools. Why we started developing this is this because our researchers have so many tools to choose from. So it presents some kind of a tyranny of choice. And also some of the tools are not quite known too. So we develop a centralized overview of the available tools, and we focused on the user perspective in this. So it's more focused on the simplicity and clarity, and to promoting the respective tools, so the researchers get to know about them. We prepared a short video tutorial where you can see just what's the catalog about. So Rory, if you can please start the video.
Okie dokie, will do.
Welcome to our Data Management Tools catalog. The catalog offers a clear and structured overview of a wide range of tools for research data management, including tools specific to the Czech research environment. First, you can see the data lifecycle displayed as a circle diagram with its individual phases. Here, you can select a domain filter. You can reset it at any time using the button with the infinity symbol. When you click on a specific phase of the data lifecycle, a short description appears here, together with a list of tools that can be used at that stage. By selecting a particular tool, you can view its detailed description and follow a link to its website. The icons next to the tool description indicates its disciplinary scope. The infinity symbol here means that the tool can be used across disciplines. The domain filter therefore shows both tools specific to the selected field and tools that are generally applicable. Now let's take a look at a few practical examples. Imagine I am a researcher in particle physics, and during a project, I need to share experimental results with colleagues from another institute. First, I will select the domain filter. Then I will select the phase organizing and collaborating. And now the relevant options are displayed. These include, for example, file sync and share via EOSC EU node, or, for example, the own cloud via CESNet. As the universal icon indicates, these tools can also be used in other disciplines. Now, let's take a look at a different example. I am a researcher in structural biology, and I am looking for a tool to help me model the structure of a protein. I select the disciplinary filter. Then I will click on the analyzing phase, and I can find the Foldify via eInfra, which is a web-based application built on AlphaFold that uses machine learning to predict protein structures. And now, one final example. Let's say I'm a linguist working with long audio recordings of interviews. I'm looking for a tool that would make this work easier. First, I will again select the domain filter. Then I will click on the processing phase. Now I can find the tool xMaLDReTH, which can be used for tasks such as transcription and annotation for audio recordings. We continuously develop the tools catalog, adding new features and expanding it with additional tools. We welcome your suggestions and feedback, which you can share via the Padlet platform available at this link. You can also contact us at our email address openscience@knaf.cz. We believe that the catalog will help you better navigate research data management tools and find solutions that fit your needs. We will be happy if you return to it regularly and help us further improve it and develop it.
Okay, thank you very much, Anna. Let's see. I think we'll come back to bring this into the discussion at the end. So we won't have questions or discussion now, but we will come back to this at the end. Great. Okay. I can no longer see the list of attendees, but can anyone see? Is CJ here? I guess probably not. It's the middle of the night for him.
I'm here. I'm here. Sorry, Rory. I had issues with
You are, my God.
yeah.
Well, unbelievable. I finished my last session last night at 1 a.m. and started this one at 8 a.m. So I was feeling kind of sorry for myself, but you're really above and beyond the call. Well, it's a great pleasure for me to introduce CJ, who I think probably is known to the whole world, or many in this group anyway. So CJ, over to you. I will advance the slides, so just say next slide when you're ready.
Sure. Okay. So hi folks. Thank you for your patience and apologies for that heart attack. I should have gotten up just 10 minutes earlier to figure that out. So we do have a task force between these two groups, between MaLDReTH and the Global Open Research Commons International Implementations Working Group. And so that's what I'll be talking about. This is a group that has members from, or this is a task force that has members from both MaLDReTH and GORC. So it's been really fun to work together and see where are the connections between the two task forces. So you can advance to the next slide, Rory. So the GORC typology that we often abbreviate the Global Open Research Commons to GORC has a set of essential elements. So this is the diagram of the typology, which is very commonly used or referenced. We have a set of human-focused essential elements in the white. So that's things like governance, sustainability, engagement, human capacity, and rules of participation and access. And then we've got technical elements that are in light blue along the bottom. So those things like the ICT infrastructure, or your compute, your storage, your network, research objects and services and tools, and then a central essential element or a connecting essential element that's in that dark blue in the center, which is where kind of interoperability and standards and conventions sit. And so I will also give a shout out to Natalie Williams, who is not on this call because she's in the same time zone as I am, actually, who created the slides, and she did a great job by putting in the links and QR code there. So if you want to go see the typology and learn a little bit about the definitions of each of these, you can do so there. Go to the next slide, please, Rory. So the purpose of this group was to map the entities, in particular in services and tools, to in the GORC model, to and from the MaLDReTH model. While GORC has a kind of connection between the essential elements, it was pretty quickly identified that some of them, there was a lot of connection and a lot of relevance to the MaLDReTH model, especially in services and tools. The two models do complement each other. So MaLDReTH focuses on practical day-to-day researchers' use in their work. It's something that folks that are assisting with research, so you can think about it like librarians or other service providers, can use MaLDReTH directly. And then GORC kind of takes this all-encompassing approach. So it's a little bit behind the scenes or enabling services that are also included. And so the purpose of the task force, which I've already mentioned a little bit already, is to kind of connect these a little bit more efficiently. It doesn't really make sense to have two different, completely separate and different versions of services and tools, especially when we could have one maybe more referenceable thing that can be pointed to. We want to help organizations decide when they use each model. Some of them are going to, sometimes it's going to be more efficient to use one over the other, or to use them in combination. We want to help create guidelines in order to how to do that and to prevent duplication of effort in that kind of way. Ultimately, this is, of course, in the spirit of RDA to maximize benefits for the research community and to really help with the folks that are also working to facilitate the research community too. So next slide, please. So the objectives that we kind of had for this were to identify connections between the services and tools element in GORC and the MaLDReTH map. So this includes the phases of the research lifecycle as well as the tools categories within. So we did an initial mapping at a bit of a high level, and then also a mapping at what we're working on now of a detailed level. We want to create guidelines on how to use these two things together once we've identified how they connect, and to, again, prevent duplicate efforts between the two, not just with the users of the two models, but also between the two groups. Next slide, please. So one of the first things we realized, and this was also discussed at a pretty pivotal event for the GORC groups, which happened in July of last year in 2025, called the Lawrence Workshop, where we realized that the services and tools essential element in GORC just on its own, before kind of thinking about connections with other models, needed a little bit more of a refinement. There's kind of a mishmash of things in there. We've already kind of mentioned it before, where there's both things that researchers would use, but then also the things that would enable those other services and tools, so things that sit on top of it. We had it already identified as, ICT infrastructure, so things like your storage infrastructure, your network infrastructure, your compute infrastructure, your foundational operating systems, that sort of thing. But it was realized that there were some things in services and tools that were kind of in that same category of enabling. So we further refined in this task force that there really were two different kinds of services we wanted to identify between. So research-facing services and tools, which are the things that the researcher or an end user would actually invoke or interact with to perform, support, or facilitate a research task. And the example that's given here is a data management plan service, but you can also think about this as like visualization tools. You can also think about it like analysis tools. And essentially, what we're kind of getting to is the MaLDReTH model really has all of these examples of research-facing services and tools that we would want. The other kind that exists that we identified is enabling services and tools. So those are the underlying things that are required for those research-facing tools to actually run. And one example is the metadata harvester, but you can think of other things like minting persistent identifiers and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. So the very first thing that we've done in this task force is try and go through the GORC model first, just because there were a lot of things in there to say which things are very obviously research-facing, which things are very obviously enabling. And then we can work on the research-facing side to see where the connections are with MaLDReTH. And so I'm going to go through this list a little high level, but we will get into a little bit more detail there. That we found some things could be split apart. Like in the GORC model, it wasn't actually clear which one was research-facing, which one was enabling, so some work needs to be done there. And it was not a 50-50 split. So research-facing services and tools, things like repositories, discovery services, and this is new, so we need to add some stuff. things for direct research tasks, services and tools that enable workflows and middleware, vocabulary and semantic object services, the Commons catalog, which would be a catalog of the services and tools you're offering. So a service catalog is another way we might say that. Research object management services and tools, and persistent identifiers. So the actual using of the PIDs. And then on the enabling side, still discovery services, but more on the enabling harvesting side. The data management services and tools for logistical or administrative data, not for the research objects themselves. The kind of enabling side of persistent identifiers, and parts of the security and identification services like AAI and help desk. So that was our first task, and we made that split and identified where some things need to be changed in the GORC model to help facilitate that. Next slide, please. So as I was saying, we're going to map the research enabling one with MaLDReTH, and that's kind of our first objective, check mark. We're finding already where the connections are. Next slide, please. So this is a showcase of the mapping at the high level. So between the research life cycle and these higher level research-facing services. The GORC model ones are listed along the vertical, and then the multi-life cycle along the horizontal here. And an X showcases where we said, okay, these services, these research-facing services, are relevant in these phases of the research life cycle. And you can see there's a lot of X's across the board. So we know that these services are being used in a number of places by researchers, or they have the potential to be used or be relevant. So there's going to be some interesting connections on how we represent this, but this is kind of where we've done the work of actually doing that connection. I think the table kind of speaks to itself, and if there's questions afterwards, or I might come back to it, that's also fine. But this might be a good opportunity just to mention that we will be going into a more in-depth analysis of the work during the work session in the same time slot on Thursday. So I'll just do a pointer to that. Next slide, please. And that's an excellent segue into the last slide that I have, which is attend the GORC session on Thursday for more opportunities to discuss and dive into some of the details of what we've been talking about in the task force. Our next big steps are to determine what information is not captured in MaLDReTH. The GORC model has a lot of very granular detail, and some things we don't necessarily want to lose information, but we also are very keen on not updating MaLDReTH unnecessarily. We see that once we can kind of figure out where all the information sits, then it's going to be figuring out the connection mechanism between the two models. Does one point to the other? How do those two containers work together? And then lastly, to submit some recommended changes to the GORC model for review by the larger working group, and that'll be towards our version 2 of the GORC model. So that's my update. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, CJ. That was great. So just to kind of remind people where we are in the session, we started out with a very, very brief overview of MaLDReTH and PRISM. Then we spoke a bit, and Anna also contributed to a discussion of some of the outreach and kind of interaction activities we've been engaged with. And then CJ just gave us a nice overview of the GORC MaLDReTH task force and the group and the work that it's doing to try to bring the two models together in useful ways. So those were the first two segments of our session today. And in the third segment, we're going to talk about what really is the major focus. Well, I won't say it's the major focus because the others are important too. The major internal focus, let's say, of the MaLDReTH2, the MaLDReTH2 working group, which is to look at interoperability. So I'm going to start with this video, which Maria Pratsalis, one of the co-chairs, has kindly prepared. And I was blown away when I saw this. It's actually more than just interoperability. I think it's a very articulate and interesting presentation of both MaLDReTH and PRISM. So I think it's a very valuable construct, and I think we need to get this video out there. So this is like the world premiere of this video. So I feel like we're all privileged to be here. I hope you enjoy it.
Hello, my name is Maria Pretzelis, and I'm going to give a short demonstration of PRISM, which is the platform for research infrastructure synergy mapping. Before we dive into how it works, I want to explicitly acknowledge Adam Viles-Moore. He single-handedly developed, coded, and built this application for us as a prototype for the MaLDReTH 2 working group. So whereas our first working group focused on categorizing research tools across the 11 stages of the research life cycle, we realized that simply identifying these tools wasn't enough. We know that in the real world, these tools don't or shouldn't exist in isolation. Researchers are forced to manually move their data and metadata between systems. I also want to clarify what PRISM is not. It is explicitly not intended to be another static tools registry, inevitably going out of date in time. It's really a conceptual scaffolding, so using a representative set of tools to map out vertical interoperability. So showing how these systems and tools connect across the research lifecycle, from planning to processing to preservation. Fundamental unit of PRISM is the tool interaction. So an interaction represents a connection or an integration between two tools that enable data flow or workflow enhancement. So every interaction has a source tool. So this is the tool that is initiating the connection or sending the data, and a target tool, and that is the system that is receiving the data. Directionality really matters here. So for example, pushing code from GitHub to Zenodo for long-term archiving is a very different workflow than being in Zenodo, linking back to a GitHub repository. So by mapping these specific connections, PRISM allows infrastructure providers to do kind of reverse mapping. So to look at the tools their university provides and see where their tool chains are broken, where data is getting trapped or siloed. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a new integration. So we're going to say DMP tool connecting to RSpace. This interaction type, this is metadata exchange. I add a description of this interaction here. From here, again, this is where you can add optional technical details. If you have more information on this implementation, contact information for someone who's knowledgeable about this interaction, and a few categories to help understand maturity, complexity, and or importance of this interaction. So clearly, mapping an entire ecosystem is not practical. So PRISM does support bulk imports via CSV tools. So you can export interactions, upload interactions, and of course you can also upload your tools CSV. So looking to the future, we realize that manual entry of all this information isn't infinitely scalable. We're exploring automated web crawlers and AI agents to discover potential tool interactions by scanning GitHub repositories and registries. So Adam had been looking into that work. However, PRISM is always going to rely on a human in the loop curation model. We'll always need the community to review these automated claims, to validate the technical details, and make sure that they're actually value to the research workflow. So that brings us to one of the most critical areas of our work right now is standardizing how we are defining these interaction types. So before we can build this accurate map of research infrastructure, we're really looking at determining if our definitions of interaction types and technical details, if these make sense, and how best to capture the realities of technical tools and how these tools interact together. That's it for the demo. Thanks for watching.
Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that. It was even better for me watching it for about the fifth time. I guess we just missed the Academy Awards. I think they took place last weekend, but maybe next year. So we'll come back to this in the end in the discussion. So just to, I guess, really, this is going to go over things that Maria said, but I actually don't think she did mention this, but in our current interoperability deep dive, we've identified as kind of a useful construct because there's so many different, not just kinds of interoperability, but levels of interoperability. So we've distinguished between primary interoperability and secondary interoperability. Secondary interoperability being the methods tools that allow for the method of interoperability to happen. And this is, again, this Maria, at the very end of the demo, she did allude to the interaction type. So the work that we've just also to bring everyone who hasn't been involved up to date with what's happening now in terms of the working group. So maybe just take a step back. So Adam, as Maria said, created Prism and then was updating it, and it's a very incredible project that he's done, especially given that he just did this. He he wasn't paid for it. He wasn't employed to do it. He just did it as his kind of personal contribution to MaLDReTH. So the work that we've been doing in recent months has been to for the other members of the group to get to grips with Prism, to understand it, and also to give some user feedback in a way. And the one of the areas where we thought as a group that Prism could be improved, again, it was really an alpha, was to focus on the categories of interoperability were the categories that Adam had suggested. That, there's no right or wrong, but were they the best? Were they optimal? Were they confusing? Were there too many of them? So we've been really looking at in some detail at all of the categories that Adam identified, and then we've eliminated some. I think there were 12 or so originally. So you can see now we've bottomed out on the ones that you see in the left column there, and then also adding this primary secondary descriptor again, as hopefully as a again, to make it easier to use and to understand. So that's actually where that is where things stand at the moment. Is we have pretty much completed this exercise, and this has not yet been incorporated into Prism itself. So if you look at Prism as it exists today, it's still got all the types that that Adam had in originally. So that's where things stand at the moment with the group's work. And yeah, so well, we're about halfway through. So that is the end of the presentations. And let me stop sharing my screen. I can hopefully see everyone again. Yes. So I'm suggest that, how many people do we have? We only have 14 people, and we're not at all pressed for time. So I suggest that we just briefly introduce ourselves. And if everyone is happy to introduce yourself, if not, no, it's not a requirement. But I look going across from left to right. I see myself, then I see CJ, and then I see Julian or Julian. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for this. It was very impressive. It's some French. I don't know if you can hear from the accent. Hopefully not too much. I'm working in Saudi Arabia. I originally come from the research community, really in material science. And like 2 years ago, I figured out I would go more toward fair data. Or the field I was working on was a mess. Really, there's no rule, no standards. Everyone does the things the way he wants. And I realized I probably would have more impact trying to clean up a bit rather than that. So then I moved to fair data, promoting it, developing a little bit of tools. And then I moved to actually governance in my university because people say you can promote what you want, but if there's no rule, nothing's gonna happen. So I prepared the research data management policy for our university, which is in phase of being adopted. And now, just since February, I joined the library. So I'm working on creating repositories to host all this data. So yeah, I've really attacked the problems from several sides, really, but still all recent, started in 2024 already.
Okay, thank you. And next is Jindrik.
Hi. Yeah, I'm from the same institute as Anna is from. So I'm also from Czech Republic, from the Library of Czech Academy of Sciences, from Open Science Department. So we work also with for data as Julian, data management tools, and we are helping the users with creating the data management plans. Yeah, and yeah, it's basically my background. And I studied sociology, so yeah, my domain is the social sciences. But we as a department are serving a lot of institutes, like all the imaginable domains. So it's the reason why our catalog is not focused on one domain, but yeah, cross-domain.
Thank you. Femi.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yes, thanks. Femi Admiral, I work at Leiden University in the library as well. We have a research data services catalog that we keep up, but it has not been structured the way the one was shown here. I have a background in linguistics, and I come from data archiving perspective mostly, but we currently have a project on interoperability. My colleague Ari is also here today. Yeah, and I was just curious to see the updates of the status of the outputs. I've seen outputs from MaLDReTH working group before, and I was curious to see what the status is of the current work.
Okay, thanks for joining. So that Ari, you're next. You're muted, I think, or we can't hear you somehow.
Not muted, but I can't hear you. No.
Okay, maybe the other Anna could go ahead while we're waiting for Ari. Maybe Anna, are you there? Anna Emilio?
Yeah, sorry, I thought you meant somebody else. Yeah, so I'm Anna. I work at the observatory in Brussels, as well as in the FEDUS project, which is the Federal Open Science Cloud. And we're basically dealing with open science at the level of the Belgian Federal Institute. So promoting open science, building tools. So we're interested also in this group because of this activity. And there's a colleague of mine, Judith Bierno, today here as well. So.
Oh, great. All right, Judith, do you want to go next?
Yes, please, I would love to. Hi. So yeah, I work with Anna on the FEDOSC project in Belgium, and yeah, we are actually working on promoting open and fair practices, as Anna said. But what's interesting about this initiative is that we're working both from facing the researchers community, but also facing the governance bodies. I like the distinction that was made in the presentations between research-facing tools and enabling tools, because we're definitely working on both sides of the issue. And we've actually used GORC and MaLDReTH models to map out our own ecosystem and to use them as gap analysis enabling tools to define our roadmap a little more specifically. So I'm thankful for both working groups, and thank you for the amazing presentations. They're very inspiring.
Oh, great. Well, that's good to know you've been using it. Thank you. Louise.
Hi everyone. Apologies, my camera's off. I'm on the train. Yeah, I'm Louise Poseidon. I work at Leiden University with Femi and Ari, but in a different department. I'm in the Center for Science and Technology Studies. I was a member of MaLDReTH 1 and was really interested by the work that was going on in the group. I'm really pleased to see how far it's advanced. I do quite a lot of work looking at accessibility of infrastructures. I work with Hugh Shanahan looking at global accessibility. So this is very interesting for us and looking forward to diving into it more deeply. Thanks.
Thank you. Oh, Eileen, I see you've just put an introduction in the notes, which maybe that means you can't speak, but feel free to unmute yourself and introduce yourself if you can. Otherwise, we can all read the introduction in the note. Maybe you can't speak. Ari, are you able to speak now? Ah, okay. Ari's also just put an introduction. He's on the train. Introduction in. Well, I'll just read out Eileen. So Eileen says, I'm a research data officer at the University of Strasbourg. I started following the RDA in 2023. Very interested in several interest groups and working groups, among them GORC and MaLDReTH. And Ari says, I'm on a train, so better to give intro by text. I work in two Dutch universities, Leiden and Delft, for data interoperability solutions. My background is in research infrastructures and environmental sciences. I'm very interested on documenting ways to find and use data interoperability in practical data support and research operations. Fantastic. And the other Anna was already introduced when she introduced, or I introduced her and she introduced herself. So I think that's that. Chris.
Hello. It's very late or early in the morning here in New York City where I am, so I'm going to keep my camera off. My name is Chris Wu. I am a solution strategist at a nonprofit organization called Invest in Open Infrastructure. I've been chatting with people a little bit about PRISM. I am part of this working group and had supported Adam in his work on PRISM, which is in part modeled on a tool that IOI put together called InfraFinder, which I was the product lead for. It's very nice to meet you all. Yeah, it's been a great experience working on with Rory, CJ, Natalie, Maria, and Adam on this project. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Chris. I mean, Chris has also had amazing contributions and commitment and input into both the MaLDReTH work and the MaLDReTH GORC work. So it's been an absolute pleasure to have you. And also, we couldn't have done it without you. Okay, I think the last person is Majid.
Yes, I'm Majid from Synchrotron Soleil. So I'm very interested in the topic. It's the first time I'm attempting, so I would like to hear more about this topic. I will try to catch up.
Okay, thank you. And actually, I realize now that's not the last person because we still have Françoise. So Françoise.
Yes, so you said already I am involved in GORC. I am an astronomer based in Strasbourg in France, and I am also one of the co-chairs of the national node RDA France. So I have to tell you that we were discussing with Aline in private, because it's possible in Zoom, about pushing the model to Recherche Data Gouv, to the National Data Service, because it seems they have a working group on tools. And so I think that we have a meeting at the end of this month. There is I have to talk about RDA and plenary, and I think it will be one of the topics, and we will try to find the relevant people to discuss further.
Fantastic. Well, this is really, really exciting because thank you, Francois. That's good to know. Thanks for the introduction. Francois obviously
yes,
is. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I put a note in the chat also because I heard Judith explaining how they used Gork and MaLDReTH for their own needs. And I would like to encourage people who do these kind of things to submit an adoption story to the RDA, because there is a good collection, and it's really a good thing to have real examples in real life and in different contexts. And in this case, in that context, I am not sure there are so many examples. So if you can do an adoption story with the two recommendations of the RDA, it would be extremely useful for others. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
That's duly noted. I will definitely do that with my team. Thanks.
I mean, that's really, thank you. Well, this is really thrilling for those of us who've been involved, just to hear that, it's like software developers say, oh, I'd rather be open source because then people can see my code. I think anyone who's been involved in one of these working groups feels the same way. It's really exciting when people actually use it. And I feel like MaLDReTH is the kind of the younger brother or sister of Gork, because Gork has started earlier and was ahead of us. And Francois, as you know, and as you have helped promote, and CJ, one of the things that Gork has done is to, and I think is still working on, is to make it easy for people to document and share their experiences of using Gork. And we haven't done that with MaLDReTH. And so far, the outreach, if you want to call it that, has been very informal. And the interactions we've had have been very informal. And we kind of learn by chance. Today we learned that FedOsk used it as a reference, and we've heard that DRAC is using it, and we know that Surf is using it, but we don't. No one actually told us this. We just kind of came across this information, and it would be extremely useful for us to. And again, TJ, this is something which we can hopefully coordinate on, because the two constructs continue to develop. In addition to this kind of the particular services and tools work, maybe is to think about a common location for use cases or adoption stories, and making that easy as well. So that's fantastic. So wow, this is really, really exciting stuff. So we have about half an hour left. I'm thinking I didn't really have a chance to see I couldn't see any of the questions during the presentation. But shall we start by going through questions or comments which have been put in the notes? Because I think it would be useful to cover those off. So I'm just going to go through those. Some of them, like Francois has actually answered a few of the questions already. Okay, here's a question. The first one I could come up is Judith, where it says, would it be possible for another ecosystem to use this model of catalog and add in tools that are locally relevant? Is it simply a web page? I think that question was directed to Anna, actually. So Anna, would you? Oh no, sorry, Anna's already commented. Yes, I believe it would. Currently, it is hosted as a GitHub page in the database of tools itself in the form of a table, which is exported in JSON. Please contact me. Okay.
Yeah. I would definitely love to be able to communicate this analysis that we've been doing at the level of FedOsk to our research community, because all they see is the result of this analysis. But if there would be a way to display it using this lifecycle model towards them in a way that's user friendly, then that would become a priority for us. And I'm glad that I'm actually browsing the GitHub at the moment. I never heard about this catalog before today, so that's why I said I was very inspired this morning. I'm glad I joined.
Thank you very much. Don't hesitate to contact me.
I won't. Thanks, Anna.
And then Julian says, in which stage of the life cycle would you typically put data curation, or that could be anywhere depending on whether the raw data. Then Anna says the catalog itself is an overview of available tools from different platforms. Data curation is often related to the preparation of data before depositing it into a repository. Maybe I'll just make a comment there that that the tools that in MaLDReTH, tools, categories of tools, and therefore tools themselves, but more importantly, categories do appear in different phases of the research lifecycle, because some tools are primarily or exclusively used in one phase, but other categories of tools are used in different phases. Curation is an activity, not a tool. But again, it seems to me the curation can take place in at different phases as well. Okay, then Ari says, are there plans to provide PIDs to these interfaces? This would make sense for machine actionability of the tools. And then Ari says, to clarify, adding data or tools M to M, is that machine to machine information, I guess, which interfaces it is usable with what would be great for interoperability. Having PIDs for the interface itself with relevant metadata would be a way to give this unambiguously. Also would allow for reuse of interfaces. I don't know, Chris or CJ, would you like to comment? Because this also relates a little bit, I think, to the enabling versus researcher facing question.
Wait, sorry. I'm just trying to catch up on this. Plans to provide PIDs to the interfaces. So where we left things with you're talking about Prism, is that right? Or sorry.
Yes, I think, well, let's comment for Prism, yeah.
Yeah, so where the last that I spoke with Adam, we hadn't gotten that far. So this is interesting. Yeah, definitely interesting feedback that should we decide and get resources to build Prism out, we'd certainly look into that. It has been something that he and I have discussed with regard to making sure that when a tool is input, what would be the key that allows us when thinking about the data model itself, what would be the key that allows us to know that whatever's been identified is the same thing or something different? So we'll take this feedback into consideration if, again, if we get resources to go ahead and continue building out Prism.
Okay, thanks, Chris. I don't know if CJ is still here.
I'm here.
Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, I think where we are looking at where do the two models kind of connect together and how they can be used. One of the things we are actively working on is creating persistent identifiers for each item in the GORC model. And so I think while I hadn't thought about this because it's being worked on by two completely different groups within the GORC working group, I think that's a natural extension to say that items in MaLDReTH would get a persistent identifier once we figure out what that connection mechanism is. So maybe, Chris, that's an answer to capacity, is that we can use some, I don't want to say there's resources in the GORC working group because we don't have RDA Tiger support anymore with the ending of that program, but maybe that's something we can look at as a combination activity, is having, when we figure out what the connection is between the two models and how that'll happen practically, we can then think about how do we assign PIDs to things in MaLDReTH and have them interconnect with the rest of the Gork model too.
Okay, thank you. And then the next one I'm just going down is Francois says, lots of curation work to feed Prism. Absolutely. It is in the hands of the working group at this stage. So yes, and I don't know if anyone noticed it, but Maria actually comments on that in the video, and she points out that, I mean, I think there are how many, several hundred tools in MaLDReTH and Prism, and then you have different if you look at different possible tool-to-tool interactions, it's even more than several hundred. So far we've just been doing it manually and done a couple of in effect examples, but that's not, as the question implies, and as Maria said, it's not scalable. So one of the things we'll be doing next, and actually, you know, if anyone wants to, we always need people, whether we do things manually or try to do it more scalably using things like AI tools. It still needs people to do it. So in fact, the next thing we'll be looking at is exactly this: how can we scale the input of tool interactions in Prism? So yes, Francois, yes, it is the working group. At the moment, it's manual, but really the next thing on our plate is to look at more scalable methods of doing input, which of course would then itself need curation, but at least to get started. Then the next one is really interesting. Judith says, can anyone contribute to Prism by adding an interaction? And Chris says, yes, the tool is intended to accept contributions. I think that's true. So the tool technically is designed to incorporate contributions, but it does bring up an important a governance issue, or really design issue, because the original, if you will, the original categories and the original tools were validated by this extensive involvement from a very open process, but an extensive process which involved community input, just as was the case with MaLDReTH. So there's some validation of the categories and the tools. So okay, that's good for a start, but then where do we go? And I think that's a question which needs discussion. It's a policy question, it's a governance question, it's a design question. Do we just make it possible for anybody to contribute anything? Should there be any curation? Should there be any? What if someone contributes a tool which only they use, no one else is ever going to use? And if you get thousands of those in there, then it becomes kind of a bit busy. But on the other hand, if you don't allow contributions, then people are going to say, well, my tool is not in there, so it's not useful. So I think it's an interesting discussion, and we haven't really, that issue has been raised, but we haven't really addressed it or attempted to address it at all systematically. Okay. And then Chris had some, Chris put some, thanks Chris for putting some pointers into that issue. Is there a curation or verification process? Oh, okay, we just touched on that.
Rory, I see Julian has his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yes, sorry, Julian. Yeah.
No worries. And thank you, Judith and Rory. Yeah, my question is, so that's really amazing. I mean, when I started working in Fedata, my first thing was like, wow, everyone is trying his small stuff, and there's so many options, so many things on the market, and where to start. And so already categorizing the tools like this is really a huge help. Now, even within each category, there's still a load of tools. And when I started, I didn't know where to start. And just my personal history is I tried to figure out how to decide one or the others. And I was, of course, one important criteria is how broadly is it used, because you want it to become to be on the one that may become a standard at some point, or maybe if because they're all very new things, so many of them are very new things. I was also try to find something which maybe organized by a team which is maybe too big to fall or too backed up by institutions or something like this. Is there any element or consideration, or in the future maybe giving some kind of metrics or things like this to be able to compare those tools and help for the decision?
You mean compare use of individual tools, metrics, or
For example, something like this, something that would give some method elements or something that could be able to be used to compare the tools really.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea, right? Because the tools that are in there now as examples are there because this community exercise, there was a lot of debate. I mean, so just to go back a bit, so how did the examples and the tools get in there? Well, first of all, we decided to have three for each, three categories, three examples of each tool category, and then three example tools. And so if you look at the original spreadsheet, in some cases, there's actually 47. The longest one was people suggested 47 different kinds of tools. Examples of tools for that category. But we felt that was just unwieldy. If you have that many, then it becomes, it's unusable. So it was quite a rigorous process. But that was very qualitative, and it depended on who was in the discussion group, at the day, because different people have different opinions. And clearly there are tools that are not in there that could be examples. But again, this is not a listing of tools. I think that's a fundamental point which Maria made. It's meant to be a construct which can be used as a reference. So in a way, the individual tool examples are not that they're relevant, but they're not the main thing. The categories are important, I think. And so, and the other thing is these things will evolve over time. In 5 years' time, the categories are going to change. The names, some will still be relevant, some will not be so relevant. You need to bring new ones in. So it needs to be a living construct as well. But the notion of having some kind of metrics as to drive, for example, let's say if we're able, we haven't discussed it, but we have this hope that some organization would take over MaLDReTH and PRISM, an organization with resources that's not dependent on volunteers. And in that case, it'll need to be constantly updated, because the big problem with many of these lists of tools is that they quickly go out of date. Someone comes up with them and then they aren't updated. So when you're updating, if there was if you could refer to some metrics as opposed to just what somebody thought, that would be very good. Because I think another problem of many of these kind of things is that they're a particular group or community, they have their own angle and they do it, but it's not really, it's not necessarily generalizable, and it's not as kind of neutral as it could be. But again, metrics could be a way to try to drive more objective or broadly applicable content, I think. So yeah, I mean, I don't have any particular thoughts myself on what kind of metrics or how they would be collected, but if you do, we'd not either now or later, we'd be delighted to hear your suggestions. Well, there we go. So those, I think we're now at the bottom of the chat. So are there other things which people have thought of or like to discuss or bring up, or things which haven't been brought up before, that anyone would like to bring up as a topic? Well, at the close of the session I was involved in last night, James Wilson said, "I'm not very good at trying to bring these silences to a close." Here we go. Here's another one. Julian. Okay, this is Julian. I think repositories have some sort of certifications that exist. Maybe we would borrow some metrics from those that they use there. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Anyway, it doesn't seem like there are other things which people would like to discuss, and I think we should at least try to let CJ go back and try to reclaim some of his evening for a few more hours of sleep before dawn comes, which I don't think is that far off. So CJ, thanks for everyone for attending, and thanks for all the really active contributions. Thanks to Anna for making your presentation, and thanks in particular to CJ for doing it in the middle of the night. And hope to see you in one of our MaLDReTH meetings soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks.
Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Have a great day, great night. Bye.
Chris, are you still there?
Oh, yes, I am. I'm just doing a quick.
Wondering. Oh, thanks. Do you know how to save the? I'm just thinking we should try to save the chat. I don't know how. By chance, do you know how to do that?
Save the chat. If
Yeah.
if there is a recording, the chat should end up saved in the files.
Okay.
And then I've locally saved the transcript of this conversation as well. So
Okay.
I can email that to you if that's helpful.
Fantastic. Thanks. It was recorded, so
Okay.
that should be fine
Yeah.
then. Excellent.
All right.
Okay. Great. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Bye.
Take care.